Hello and welcome back to RamsTalkPodcast, and we're here today. We're recording this on the Sunday. Derby have just been beaten pretty comfortably 2-0 by Leeds on Saturday, and now we have the small job of going to Turf Moor to face Burnley, another team chasing promotion up at the top of the league. And to tell me all about Burnley is a man who knows, I'd hope, a little bit about them by now. It's host of TurfCast podcast, Joe. How are you, Joe?
Yeah, good, thank you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm pretty good, thank you. I mean, yesterday, not so great. I'd say the atmosphere at Derby was pretty toxic. I think the atmosphere on social media was just as toxic. So I'm interested to hear what it's like at Burnley at the minute. We've obviously just done our recording for your show as well. So I think I know a little bit more about the club than I probably did before that. But talk me through Burnley at the moment. What sort of position are you in? And you know, how's the fan base viewing the season so far?
I think personally, I think we're in a decent position. Obviously, third in the league, above Sunderland now, who I've been saying for a while, I think will fade. But it's looking like there is going to be a top three or a top four, potentially a top five if Middlesbrough manage to sneak into it. But they are 5 points behind Sunderland now. They're in fifth and Sunderland in fourth. But I do think we're going to be part of the group that hopefully starts to pull away. My worry is that we just don't keep pace with Leeds and Sheffield United, because I do think they're both in a better position than us at the minute. January could change that. I think Leeds have got a very strong squad, and I saw what Leeds, not physically, I've seen the stats, but I saw what Leeds did to you on Saturday, and it was a typical Leeds at Elland Road performance. They've not just done it to you, they've done it to, I remember Plymouth didn't even have a shot on target, if I remember rightly. Wayne Rooney was absolutely bad for that in the press. We're not. I'll admit we're not as good as the top two, but we're managing to keep pace with them at the minute. We keep chopping and changing. Sometimes we nip to the top for a week and then we'll nip down to third. Sometimes we nip in second. So to say we're not as good, simply in my opinion, because of all the injuries, to say we're still in third and to say everything that went on in the summer, I think we're in a good position considering all things considered, because I do think that Scott Parker had the rug pulled from underneath him in the summer. He came into a completely different squad. Then a lot of them was sold. Zeki Amdouni went to Benfica. Weghorst went to Ajax. Dara O'Shea and Muric both went to Ipswich. And, you know, there's other ones in there who escaped me at this moment in time. But to then bounce back from that, eventually, it took us a couple of game weeks. We had to lose up in Sunderland and draw at home to Blackburn, unfortunately. But obviously, that's an important game for us. Then to turn it around and then to be where we are now, I think Scott Parker's doing a great job. And it's cool to hate Scott Parker, whether you're a Burnley fan or a pundit, you know, or you're a host of a random podcast that talks about all the Championship, who also are Derby fans. No names mentioned, though. It does seem to be cool to hate Scott Parker. Even the likes of Gav Sutton, who I get on quite well with, you know, they all do think it's cool to hate Scott Parker. But I think when you look at the job that he's doing a good job at Burnley. I genuinely think he's doing a good job, and we're in good form at the minute.
You know what? I think Scott Parker is the Championship Paul Warne, honestly, where he doesn't play the nicest football, but he gets teams up, and Warne's exactly the same in League One. I think Parker's in the same boat. If you want to get out of this league, Scott Parker, more often than not, is the man you want. How many teams has he taken up now? 2, 3?
Yeah, two. And that's exactly why he's been brought in. Like, when he was brought in, a lot of the Fulham and Bournemouth fans came onto the hashtag and they're like, oh, I can't believe you've appointed him. He's rubbish. He'll get you up, but then it's awful football. I'm like, oh, just stop after that. He'll get you up. That's all we're bothered about. Like, we can't just send him too long in the Championship. Like, don't get me wrong, I do prefer the Championship in terms of entertainment, but in terms of finances, I mean, every club says the same thing once they get relegated. You can't really be staying there, or you'll get stuck there. So that's why Scott Parker's been brought in. But yeah, I do think there's a ceiling with Scott Parker, and I think if we go up, because it is an if we go up, then he might not do too well in the Championship, and we need to learn from our mistakes from last season and not just stick by the manager, even though I was one of them saying stick by the manager. I think ultimately it did prove to be our downfall, to be fair. But look, if he gets us up, not playing the most entertaining football in the world, I'm not bothered. I had to watch Sean Dyche football for just short of 10 years, so I'm used to it.
Well, talk me through what happened in the summer, because last year was really strange. Obviously, you had Vincent Kompany, like you said, the club stuck by him, even though you were getting pumped quite a lot most weeks. You know,
every week.
You'd watch Match of the Day and Burnley have conceded 4, Burnley have conceded 5, and it just seemed like a constant stream of poor results. And you backed him, and then in the summer he ends up going to Bayern of all teams. Yeah. And Scott Parker comes in. I remember seeing you had a squad of about 50 players or something like that, and a lot of them ended up going. What's that transition been like, and how has it been handled by Scott Parker?
I think it's been handled very, very well by Scott Parker, if I'm being honest. I can only go off what I saw in terms of interviews and things like that with Scott at the time, but there was a lot of sort of like alluding to players that don't want to be here, players that don't want to play for the club. And then the rumours came out about certain players refusing to play up in Sunderland to push a move through. Anas Sarori was one of them, apparently. Zeki Amdouni, another one. And you know, to be fair, the good players, that Zeki Amdouni is now playing and scoring winners in the Champions League, and same without Vegos. You know, he was scoring the goals against Argentina in the World Cup semi-final, quarter-final, whatever it was, while he was at Burnley, but not getting into the Burnley team because he didn't want to play for us. It was such a bizarre thing. But then there was a bit. Vincent Kompany, don't get me wrong, that season we had in the Championship is my best season ever following Burnley. And I say that as a 36-year-old man. I've watched a lot of seasons at Burnley. I've seen Burnley finish 7th in the Premier League. But that season, the season before, was my favourite ever season, simply because we just tonked everybody in the Championship. No matter where we go, we'd beat them 3-0, nice and professional, and then sit back. And it was just good football to watch. I love every second. And then we win the league at Ewood Park, of all places. So, you know, it couldn't have gone any better. Promoted earlier than anybody's ever been promoted since the Championship's been rebranded into the Championship. All right, we didn't manage to get that record points total that Reading have, but, you know, we were one of, if not the best ever Championship side. And then we go into the Premier League, and then Vincent Kompany's found out. And I think if you want an example of somebody who's doing a similar thing this season, it's Southampton manager Russell Martin. He's standing by his principles, even though it's not working. He's playing football in a certain way, even though it's not working, even though they're getting beat every single week, even though they're going to get relegated playing this way every single week. And I think looking back, at the time, I wanted to keep Vincent Kompany. I was like, why are people wanting to get rid of him after everything he's done for us? He's got enough credit in the bank and he deserves to bring us back up, was also my thinking. Because I remember thinking, if we go down, well, after about 5 games, it changed into when we go down. But I'm thinking, if we go down, we've got a manager who can get teams out of that league playing brilliant football and who can attract brilliant players and players that want to play for him. But that was a problem. A lot of these players wanted to play for him. Anyway, it turned out he didn't really give a shiny, you know, about us. And then as soon as Bayern came in, I mean, look, it feels weird saying that because Bayern are one of the top 5 biggest clubs in Europe, right? If not the world. So you understand why he went. But at the same time, when I look back at the Premier League season last season and I look at why he was being so stubborn and playing football in the way that he was, I think it was all about brand company. That's all he was bothered about. He was thinking about himself and his future jobs. And I think Russell Martin's doing the same at Southampton. I may look like a bit of a hypocrite now because I was one of the Burnley fans last season, trying to get Burnley fans to stand by him, trying to, you know, kick off when, I can't remember the names now, them two Sky Sports, them disgraced Sky Sports presenters that ended up going on to be in sports. Andy Gray's one of it. Richard Keys. It were them that sort of like did put out a thing saying it's all about brand company. That's all he's bothered about. And I was pushing back saying, who are these dinosaurs? Turns out they were right. But yeah, the fact that he then went to Bayern was just staggering after the season that we had. Like, why Bayern even wanted him, I have no idea. But that kind of football translates to that kind of position. That's why we did so well in the Championship. We were, you know, the best quality team with the highest budget, the highest wage bill, you know, all them sort of things. We were going to have the ball. Teams were going to sit back. And that kind of football will translate to his new position. Hence why he's top of the Bundesliga. He has lost a couple of big games in the Champions League, but I'm not paying too much attention, I promise. But yeah, it's weird. Like the turn failed upwards is the perfect scenario for that. So that was a disaster because Kompany left and the chairman absolutely loved him. The players were all here for him. So then we've got a scenario now where the chairman has lost a guy that he absolutely fawned over. Like some of the interviews that he used to do about Kompany at the time, even though I were back in Kompany and loved Kompany and backed the chairman, some of them you're thinking, Alan, like, what is this? I remember him saying it's like you're going out with the prettiest girl in town and everybody wants to steal that girl off you, but you're trying your best to. It's like, Alan, come on, that's a ridiculous thing to say. We like him as well, mate. Don't get me wrong, but nobody's bigger than this football club. You're acting like Burnley are lucky to have him and lucky to be in the position that they're in. And I hate that sort of mentality, even though some people may agree we were lucky to have him and he may go on to, you know, win titles and stuff in Germany and potentially even in England and manage Belgium in the World Cup, for example. Yeah, you could argue we were lucky to have him, but it's a weak mentality that to be like, oh, we're just lucky to have him. We're happy he's here. We don't want somebody to steal him, sort of thing. So then that happened. The chairman were gutted. All the players were gutted. So then you've got players that refused to play, players that wanted out, it came out that some players, one player had a if Vincent Kompany leaves clause in his contract that he could then leave. It's just bizarre. We've got players that are still here, right? Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? We've got players that are still here that we haven't seen since the last season in the Premier League. But every time people look at our Burnley's expenditure, there's a guy in there called Mike Trezor. We signed him last summer from somewhere in Belgium. I can't remember now. On loan with an obligation. No matter what happened last season, on loan with an obligation. He was dreadful last season, but you could see glimpses of quality, but then he'd pick up an injury. Vincent wouldn't play him. And then we have to buy him at the end of that season. So now people look at that. Look at expenditure. You spent all this money. I'm like, we didn't actually buy him this summer. I mean, we did, but it was from last summer, and he's not played a single minute for us this season because he doesn't want to be here. The club keeps saying, oh, he's picked up an injury. Oh, he had appendicitis. Yeah. Oh, he's had a setback. He doesn't want to be here. He doesn't want to play for Burnley Football Club. So, yeah, it was a mess. It still is a bit of a mess. Mike Trezor refusing to play for us. I can say this on your podcast. I wouldn't say it on my podcast, but I'm a little bit unsure whether Lyle Foster's now gone that way again because he's picked up an injury while on international duty, and then all of a sudden he's back on the grass, and now he's had a setback. He might not be back until January. Oh yeah, funnily enough, he'll be back till January when he's on a plane to South Africa signing for somebody else, I presume. But yeah, it was a mess. We lost so many players, mate. I don't know the exact stats, so we had to all replace them. A new team needs to gel. We have slowly got better. We looked like a new team. Sorry, this is the longest-winded answer you've probably ever had. But we look like a new team for so long. But we are starting now to look like a team that's finally starting to gel. So yeah, I think Scott Parker, like I said earlier, in the Scott Parker answer, all things considered, because of that, has done a good job for us to be in the position that we're in.
Yeah, and it sounds that way as well. I mean, the mentality thing that you brought up, I thought was quite interesting. I think Derby are in a bit of that state at the moment where it's, look where we've come from. We almost didn't have a club, and it's that kind of weak mentality that kind of leads you to failure, isn't it? Really, because if you look at it like that and say, oh well, maybe we shouldn't even be here, then you're never going to be there because you've not got the right mentality to do it. So it looks like it. Sorry, go on.
No, it's a town mentality in Burnley as well. Like, it's not just a football club as well. It's like there's a town mentality around the football club. And I remember when we beat Old Trafford a few years ago now. Funnily enough, Chris Wood scored in that game as well. Sorry for bringing that up. But we won at Old Trafford. We won 2-0. And I was listening to TalkSport on the way home, and some guy was like, oh, we're little old Burnley. We shouldn't even be playing against these teams, and we've gone and beaten them. I'm like, come on. Like, we've been in the Premier League at like 4 or 5 years at this point. We need to stop this mentality. But yeah, there is the little old Burnley mentality, which I hate. I hate it. Yes, we're a smaller club, punching above our weight, if you will, when we're in the Premier League. But Brighton are a similar size, if not smaller club historically. You could look at their attendances and argue differently, but Brighton haven't really won anything and spent the majority of their career in the bottom 2 leagues. And I bet there's no Brighton fan walking around Brighton city centre going, oh, we're just happy to be playing against Chelsea. It's just a weak mentality, and I can't stand it, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, I can tell. But no, I know where you're coming from. I live in Burton, and Burton are exactly the same. They're very much, look where we came from. We were in non-league, and now the standards have slipped, and it's starting to come back to bite them a little bit. But let's look at Burnley's most recent results. I mean, I've just got it up in front of me. I mean, 4 wins and 1 draw in your last 5 games. That draw obviously being at home to Middlesbrough. I mean, you mentioned gelling. It looks like you're really gelling. I mean, all 4 of those wins were clean sheets as well. 2 at home, 2 away. You can't really complain too much about that. What's impressed you so much about Burnley this season? What's made it so you're pushing towards the top? Like, is it the style of play? Is it individuals? How have you sort of ended up in this position?
I think the defense is really, really good, and not to go back to a sort of like a 2002 sort of like mindset, but good defenses win your leagues, and that's what. That's what the Chelsea team were built on back in the early 2000s and things like that. And I think we are that sort of team. We're a Jose Mourinho Chelsea sort of team. It sounds ridiculous. Obviously, we're not as good as that, but sort of that sort of mold. Like, we're very good at the back. They were good going forward as well, to be fair. Obviously, of course they were. That's why they were winning so many things. But we're a very good defensive team. Like you've said, so many clean sheets recently. 0-0 at home to QPR, which is a bad result, but a clean sheet. 0-0 away at West Brom. Beat Swansea 1-0. Beat Bristol City 1-0. Beat Coventry 2-0. Beat Stoke 2-0. Middlesbrough are one of the best sides, if not the best side, going forward. And they did manage to score against us, to be fair. But I can't remember the exact amount of clean sheets.
Score against us.
Well, yeah. It's one of them. I think we've just done another show, haven't we, on my podcast? And I did say it was more our defensive error, if anything. But it was typical Burnley, just to make a mistake against the team that can punish you. But yeah, there's been so many clean sheets in that, and that's the reason why we are where we are. We're not great going forward. We haven't scored. Probably I haven't got the league table up in front of me, but I would hazard a guess as it's the lowest in lowest amount of goals probably scored by a team in the top 10. But we are getting better. The build-up play is getting better. We're still making bad decisions when we get into that final third. I think it's mainly our wide forwards. They make bad decisions. They are young, especially Luca Koleoshaw. He will go on to have a great career. He's not in great form at the minute. We're missing a striker. We're still playing like, I think he's 35, 36-year-old Jay Rodriguez up front at the minute because, as I mentioned earlier, Lyle Foster is injured, if he is injured. And so sometimes we'll play Ian Fleming in the 9, and he's not a 9, he's a 10, so that's a square peg and like a round hole sort of thing. So at the minute, we are struggling in terms of injuries. CJ Egan-Riley was injured as well at the weekend against Middlesbrough. Fingers crossed he's back because he's probably our best ball-playing centre-back, whereas Maxime Esteve is probably our best centre-back. I'll put my neck on the line and say I think he's the best centre-back in the league, and Maxime Esteve is a brilliant, brilliant centre-back. But yeah, I think the style of play isn't the best, but it's slowly getting better, and we are getting better at going forward, and fingers crossed we can carry that on, obviously, on Tuesday.
Fingers crossed you don't, because we really need you to not
thought you might
do
say
that. Yeah, I think we desperately need you to sort of draw a blank, I guess. But that doesn't seem like it's happened a lot recently. I mean, we talked on yours about how Burnley play against a low block. I know you mentioned you're quite a defensive side, and maybe coming out and being on the front foot a little bit more isn't really in the DNA of this team, maybe as much as other teams towards the top. But we all know how Derby'll set up. We'll sit back, we'll try and defend. We desperately do not want to lose no matter what happens. So I guess my question to you, Joe, is how are Burnley going to set up against a team that are simply there just to defend?
I think we'll struggle, if I'm honest with you. It does worry me, because obviously, like you said, you've just told me this on my channel, and the fact that you're going to come to Turf Moor and just basically say, break us down. The onus is on you now to break us down. That's when we've struggled. That's all Blackburn Rovers did. They scored a fluky goal against us. That's all Preston did. That's all Plymouth, Portsmouth, QPR. And we have struggled against these teams. Recently, if I'm honest with you, as I've said, we have got better. Coventry came to the turf. Coventry were a weird team, by the way. For the first 45 minutes, they just said, so up to you. Come and break us down. And we struggled, as we have done for the majority of the season. We get an early goal in the second half against them. They suddenly start playing football, and all of a sudden, they're a really good side. And I'm thinking, why didn't they play out this for the first 45 minutes? They might have been in with a shout. Then it's a little bit end-to-end. We get the second, and that just kind of kills the game. Stoke, again, similar. Not as much because it was at Stoke, so you very rarely see teams at home just play a low block. Oxford United did it, but that's, I would expect, probably the only team
Derby do it.
Small enough. I was just going to say the only team small enough in the Championship to do it, but maybe not. Stoke did it, but they did come at us, to be fair. Stoke were coming at us a lot more than Coventry did. There was a couple of more, not hairy moments, not any clear-cut chances, but a couple of moments where Stoke were counter-attacking us, and you're thinking, we could end up being behind here. And I think they had a chance later on in the first half. But again, second half, they come out, get an early goal. And then, we were dominant in that second half against Stoke. But my worry is, like I said, that you just say, no, come and break us down. We struggle to break you down. The fans get on the players' back. It gets to the 70th, 75th minute. The fans are in a mood, all being negative. That then translates onto the pitch, and obviously mistakes are made. And that's when these sort of teams that come to the turf and just refuse to play any football then start gaining a bit of confidence, then start coming to the game, then start counter-attacking us. They make positive changes because you can see it happening. And then that's how some of these teams have managed to get draws and things like that. Like, we are still unbeaten at the turf this season. I did think that might come undone against Middlesbrough when they went 1-0 up, but thankfully we managed to get back into it. But yeah, we haven't lost at home in the Championship. Obviously, we weren't in the Championship last season for nearly 2 years now. And that game was against QPR the week before we played Blackburn at Blackburn, and we could have won the league if we'd have beat QPR at home. But everybody knew that if we didn't beat QPR at home, we'd win the league at Ewood Park. And I'm adamant, not that we lost it on purpose, but the players were like, oh, well, we're behind. Doesn't matter. So, yeah, we are quite good at home. Probably not as good as Leeds, but Leeds have lost at home this season, to be fair.
I wonder who they lost to. I wonder why you brought that one up.
This shirt, mate. They were wearing this exact shirt, the team that played against them.
Because I mean, a couple of stats. Just having a look at head-to-heads. We haven't faced each other since 2016, so I won't ask about that because I have no recollection. But you battered us 4-1, and in fact, Burnley are unbeaten against Derby in the last 12 games since Derby beat them 1-0 in 2007, January 2007. So, yeah, it's. I don't think history's on our side coming to this one. I don't think form's on our side. I don't know what's on our side actually, but I think we'll be hoping that there's something, some divine intervention that can help Derby get some sort of result on Tuesday. So, Joe, factoring in everything we've spoken about in I guess the last hour we've spent together talking about Derby and Burnley, you're allowed to say something different to your podcast, mate, if you fancy Derby for a win suddenly after this. But what's your score prediction, pal? How do you see it going?
I'll just carry on from what I said on the last one. I'm not going to change it from what I were 21 minutes ago. I do think Burnley win. I think Burnley win 2-0. I think it's hopefully a nice professional job. I think if it was 6 weeks ago and you come here and said, we're going to sit back, we're going to make you work for it, I'd be like 0-0. Because pretty much so many of our games finish 0-0. Again, I have got our results up. We finished 0-0 at home against Preston, 0-0 away against Oxford, 0-0 at home against QPR, 0-0 away against West Brom. There were just so many 0-0s in there. And even every now and then we'd score a goal and it finished 1-1. Like we were just so poor at the start of the season after the first two games. Those first two games, I don't know if you saw them, were fantastic. But then obviously everything that I mentioned about the player sales and the negativity, we then took a while to get going.
Left.
But we have... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we have now started to gel. We're starting to get better going forward. So hopefully we get an early goal. That settles the nerves. And then we go on to win 2-0. But I do worry that if you're refusing to play any football and just saying break us down, it gets to the 75th minute. And then that's when you guys will come into it and potentially even could look to nick it. But yeah, you will do well to score against us, especially in open play, because we have got the best defence in the league. And if you put, I know the Championship isn't one of the top 5 leagues in Europe, but if you put the Championship among the top 5 leagues in Europe, Burnley still have the best defensive record. So we are quite good at the back, but we do need to get better going forward. But we have started to do that, but we do need to do a bit more.
Yeah, I think I can't really disagree with you too much. I think realistically, I think we'll probably end up losing 2-0. It'll be the same. We'll try and hold out and you'll just have that little bit of quality. I mean, you got players like Sarmiento. I know Jay Rodriguez is about 48 years old now, but you got players with experience in top divisions playing at top teams and players that I know you can't use this as an excuse, but players that you ended up paying a good amount of money for. And when you pay good money, you get quality players, don't you? And I think Derby lack a little bit of that at the moment. So I'm going to say I think it'll be 2-0 to Burnley as well, but I hold out hope that if Derby do turn up and Derby really do see the reaction that's been had over the last few games, 1 win in 10, 2 wins in 14, it's been so negative. If Derby can feed off that and really go for it, I think we could nick something. This is one of those games where we might get a result, a team that aren't necessarily incredible going forwards against a team that don't like to go forwards. There's a chance that we might actually nick something out of this. So thank you so much, Joe, for joining us today. Really, really appreciate your time. If people want to find more about you, more about Burnley, where will they find you?
Yes, so obviously I've just been noticing that you've got in brackets there the award-winning preview show. We are also an award-winning podcast. Silver award we got at the FCAs this year. So I'll take that. Yeah. Although some people have been giving me a bit of banter saying second is the first of the losers, but it's a silver award. So in my head, where
we got second as well. We got second as well.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Just search TurfCast podcast or TurfCast. We're on YouTube. We're a YouTube first sort of channel, as I'm sure you guys are. We're also on podcasts as well. So you search it on Spotify, Google Play, Apple. All the same places. Obviously, we're on all the social media as well, including Blue Sky, which I've tried to get into. Everyone's telling me to get into it, but I keep forgetting to upload on it. But I've tried to start to do more on TikTok as well recently, funnily enough, because Twitter is the absolute pits at the minute, and pretty much every comment is a negative one. Try to branch out into the ones. But yeah, if you want to watch us, obviously, I've just done a preview with yourself, so you can go and watch that as well. And we will be doing post-Derby content as well, fan reactions after the game. So if you guys do win, I know the Sunderland fans enjoyed all the fan reactions when they beat us. So if you guys do win, then feel free to jump over. But fingers crossed, they are happy fan reactions from Burnley fans.
There we go. Make sure you go check all of Joe's stuff out. So thank you so much for listening. If you did enjoy, please do leave a like. Please do subscribe. If you're on Spotify, Apple Pods, please give us a rating of 5 stars. If you're going to vote less than 5 stars, then please don't give us a rating. But if you do give us 5 stars, we'll be very, very grateful for it. So, yeah, we'll see you soon. Hopefully, we'll get a result against Burnley. If not, we've got Portsmouth on Friday, so can't get much worse, can it? So, yeah, thank you.